Hello and welcome to York Observatory's monthly TeleTube broadcast, the online astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. We are broadcasting live from the AICO Observatory located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. York TeleTube broadcasts every last Friday of the month at 7:30 p.m. local Toronto time, right here on our YouTube channel. For any questions or comments you have about our past shows, or if you have suggestions for future topics, please send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. You can always contact us on Instagram and PixelFed at the handle YorkU Observatory. We would like to inform you about the Summer of 2025 Astronomer in Residence program. This program is a collaboration of the Elaina Observatory with Killarney Provincial Park to host astronomers in the certified dark sky site of Killarney to lead in-person presentations and shows using the park's observatory. This week, the observatory members, Camilla Guzman, Darius Andrews, and Alex Jude will kick things off as the first astronomers in residence this year. To learn more about the program, visit our website at yorku.ca/science/observatory/AIR. Good evening, everyone. I'm Danelle, and I will be one of your hosts this evening, along with Hector, Mary Helen, and Puria. Tonight, we've got a wonderful guest speaker, Dr. Elaina Hyde, joining us, whom we will be introducing shortly. The observatory at your campus is in Toronto, and we would like to welcome you to our show and to acknowledge the traditional land that our telescope is on. The observatory acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takavanto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Our stargazing and astronomical efforts join the long history and current practices of astronomy for this land. The observatory looks forward to continuing, learning, and revitalizing our knowledge in this area. Now, Puria will tell us what's up in the sky.
Thanks so much, Dano. Welcome, everyone. Before we get started with our main show, we want to give you a little update on what you can see tonight. The moon is currently at its waxing crescent phase, and the next full moon will be on June 11. Make sure to observe the full moon on this day because it will be at its strawberry moon phase. Mars will also be visible in the night sky until it sets at 1:38 a.m. Spotting this planet will be quite easier tonight, as it will be a little closer to the moon. On the western sky, look for a reddish spot between the constellations Leo and Cancer. To spot this planet more easily, find a place with the least light pollution in the sky. There are more interesting objects that will be in tonight's sky. Tonight's brightest stars of the northern sky are Arcturus, Vega, Spica, Capella, Antares, Deneb, Altair, and many more. For deep space enthusiasts, look out for North America Nebula, Beehive Cluster, Bode, Sombrero and Whirlpool Galaxy, Pac-Man Nebula, and several other more. Now that we have covered tonight's night sky, I will pass it over to Mary Helen to introduce our tonight's speaker.
Hi, so I'm Mary Helen Armour, and I'm introducing tonight's speaker. Tonight we have Dr. Elaina Hyde. Her research combines astrophysics, data science, cloud computing, planetary sciences, optical engineering, telescope operations, and telescope observations. Her primary astrophysical research focus is in galactic archaeology, and hopefully she'll explain to us a little more what that means. But she has worked with instrumentation and telescopes around the world. As a lecturer, trainer, and consultant, she innovates teaching methodologies for interdisciplinary audiences across the sciences, as well as for businesses, students, and the general public. So welcome, Elaina.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yes, and of course, one of the things I'm most interested in is, of course, the Elaina Carswell Observatory, being their director. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that screen share to put in some interesting slides, I hope. Almost completely perfectly aligned. And there we go. So one of the things I want to talk about tonight is, of course, the Elaina Carswell Observatory, but in particular, our Astronomer in Residence program, which, as Danelle said, is running this week. So this is our inaugural first week of 2025. The Elaina Carswell Observatory has been running this program now for several years. So I don't know, it's becoming a regular occurrence, which is great. Now, in order to get started, I thought, what better way to introduce the Astronomer in Residence program than to tell you all a little bit more about the Elaina Carswell Observatory. So this is not maybe news to a lot of people who are helping in this broadcast, but I wanted to call it out because it's an integral part of how we run the Astronomer in Residence. And now the Astronomer in Residence is, I have to say, at Killarney Provincial Park this year. The Elaina Carswell Observatory is located in Toronto at York University. So the Elaina Carswell Observatory part of it is absolutely vital to the program and many, many other things. So as you could tell from my introduction, I have quite a lot of interests, and a lot of those overlap very well with our very own AICO. We have research observing, teaching, education and outreach, and of course, the Astronomer in Residence partnership. Our education and outreach is actually about to expand a little bit with our stellar scholars, so I'll give you a little sparkler on that in just a minute. But for the Astronomer in Residence, we actually have possibilities for overlap with both the outreach area, the education area, and even a little bit of the research and teaching. So if you don't know already, the Elaina Carswell Observatory at York University has an amazing facility. For an on-campus observatory, we do quite well. And in fact, our 1 meter telescope is the largest on any Canadian campus. And it's responsible for a lot of our very detailed imaging, especially of very faint targets like distant quasars, satellites, galaxies, and of course, transiting exoplanets, which are a new area that has been expanded. We have a 1 meter telescope in one of the domes, and we have a 60 centimeter telescope in our other dome. The 1 meter and the 60 are a little bit opposites. The 1 meter is the newest, the 60 is the oldest. They both do research, outreach, and observing. But when we were looking at streaming images, which unfortunately we can't do tonight because it's very, very cloudy, we usually use our 1 meter telescope. And with our partners out at Killarney Provincial Park, if one of us is clouded out, the other one can actually help by streaming live images to the location, which is a great feature. Now, at the Elaina Carswell Observatory, we do have a 40 centimeter telescope and an atrium as well that's full of little tiny telescopes, which will actually be part of our open air astro fair. Now, I have one final little fun thing. If you're interested in the Elaina Carswell Observatory, make sure to pay attention this summer because 2025 is very action-packed. We have an 8 meter sundial coming in the fall at some point. So it's going to be really, really amazing and actually very accurate for telling the time. We also have, of course, our open air astro fair and lots of other programs running. So just a little shout out, what do our weekly and regular programs look just at the observatory end? We have every Monday a York University Radio podcast, which actually happens in conjunction with every Monday online public viewing. And again, that can be from our telescopes at York or even from Killarney Park direct. On YouTube, which is probably where you're watching this broadcast. So we also have in-person viewing in Toronto if you can't get all the way out to Killarney Provincial Park. And every Wednesday night, we're either out at the atrium with our little 40 telescope and a lot of other smaller telescopes, or we're in the domes, and that will say on the free tickets you can get. Finally, our last sort of regular type of activity that we do every month is our Final Fridays online TeleTube, which you're probably in right now to watch this. So we have, of course, a lot going on. Little little sparkler, I suppose, just as an introduction to the observatory. If you are interested in obtaining time on the research quality 1 meter telescope, or even our 60 or 40, you can actually apply for time at the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory via our regular time application form, which is now live on the website. And we recently did a little sparkler for this at the Royal Astronomical Society Canada Toronto Centre for one of their regular astronomy meetings. So you can watch it all over there, but you can also see the basics here. The AICO time is open for applications from any enthusiasts or professionals. Popular programs, or our most popular current programs, are variable stars, exoplanets, and astrophotography. So very, very good stuff. Now we have all kinds of things happening. So let me not take too much time on this as just the introduction here. I have to be a little bit cautious of my time. One more thing to look forward to from the observatory end of the world is we have now a Stellar Scholars program, which is just now live, and it is giving modules for high school education, both for students and for teachers. So there's a teachers portal and a students portal. It was created by York University undergraduate students over the course of about a year, and it has online modules, including content from the Astronomer in Residence, which is where we get a lot of our dark sky measurements, which I'll tell you about again later. So the open air astro fair, which I've spoiled a little bit just by talking about it, I did want to make sure that everyone knows about that for this broadcast because it is now available for tickets. This is our only paid event, as in the only event you'd have to pay for to come to the observatory this year. It's a fundraising event. It's meant to support repairs and summer operations for the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory. And we have 17 different astronomy stations, including things from Space Place Canada, Astronomy in Action Planetarium, the IceCube neutrino detector model. We have all kinds of folks coming to join us out on top of the Arboretum parking garage roof. And this is your chance to buy tickets to this amazing event and, of course, support the observatory. It will be running from June 24th through July 4th in 2025 as a first day event. So just as a little extra sparkler to get us started. So what are we actually doing? Is I suppose one of the questions a lot of us find ourselves asking ourselves recently. What am I doing in my universe? What's going on? Which way is up? What way is forward? But for the astronomer in residence, we are operating two different sites, our local site in Toronto at the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory, and of course the remote site where we send astronomers every summer at Killarney Provincial Park. The Astronomer in Residence program has several different parts that you can actually follow along with. Even if you don't want to be an astronomer on site, you can still go and enjoy the astronomers on site if you're out at Killarney Provincial Park in Ontario. But you can also follow along with the blog program, which is on the website. So on our website, we have our yorku.ca/science/observatory. And if you go to /air or click on the Astronomer in Residence button, it will take you to the blog site. And there you can follow along with what the current astronomers on site are doing. Often they'll post astrophotography, what's up in the sky, and a lot of times they'll give you some good information about dark skies. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because, of course, with the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory on York campus and the Killarney Provincial Park, um, being very much remote and away from light pollution, we have a wonderful contrast between the sky quality in our two different locations. We do have online streams from Killarney Provincial Park as part of the Astronomer in Residence program, and you'll actually find a few of them on this very YouTube channel if you want to go and look. I believe there's some wonderful lunar eclipse streams and a few others from Killarney Park that previous astronomers have managed to capture, and they're on the YouTube channel for everyone to enjoy. And of course, I did mention in-person activities. So if you are out at Killarney Provincial Park or in that general area during the summertime, which is one of the best times to go, you can go up in person and enjoy viewing, nighttime viewing, sunspot viewing, and all kinds of other activities. So how is the program actually run? What is this thing and why is it running? How does it work? What are the nuts and bolts? So I thought I would tell you all about what might a typical week be for an astronomer in residence. Now, I've mentioned the different locations. We have, of course, all of the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of the system, the forms, the blog, all running through the Elaina Carswell Observatory, and of course, backup streams going both ways. But if you're out at site in Ontario at the parks, usually you would do one of our very popular weekly activities. So the astronomers will tend to run 3 different activities during a week on different days. So you have 7 days of the week, and on 3 of those days, an activity will run. Usually it's Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, but they do change it up. So just make sure to check the schedule if you're trying to catch a specific activity. There's an evening program where they watch the sky through the telescopes on site, a solar program where, of course, we go and look at sunspots with safe solar viewing filters. There's an outdoor amphitheater, which is really, really lovely, and it's actually where we give talks on site at Killarney Provincial Park. So we have a lovely open air amphitheater. So it does have to not be raining to go out there, but it's usually pretty good. And that's where we give long form talks about planets and what's up in the sky and whatever the astronomers want to talk about that week. There's also a beach program that's very popular where we go out to the beach at Killarney and you get to look across the lake and do stargazing and star hopping. So it's a great chance for people to practice their star hopping skills and maybe make use of that stellarium program you saw earlier for What's Up in the Sky Tonight. Find out if you can spot Mars or the moon, or maybe even some of those dimmer objects, because of course, as the dark skies the dark skies make all the difference. So the other main component of the running of the Astronomer in Residence program is that there is actually a committee made up of myself and several other members. So Bruce Waters is our Killarney Parks Observatory expert who has been with the program since its inception, I should say. And we have a lot of members from the parks themselves. So obviously this is an Ontario Parks location and they have their own official sort of organization and setup. And we have a few members from there, as well as myself and Bruce Waters. And we have this partnership between the Killarney Provincial Park and the Elaina Carswell Observatory. So our official start was in 2022, which was the very first year we ran. And that was a little bit, yeah, a little bit hectic, but I think we've managed to repair most of the gremlins in both of the scopes, knock on wood. And now we've been running and it's 2025. We're doing it again. Amazing. So every year we add a bit of new capacity to both actually the Elaina Carswell Observatory and Killarney Park. 2022 was our first year running. We had 9 astronomers go out to Killarney Park. We actually had, in that first year, we had several graduate students from Canadian universities participate as astronomers, as well as some amateur astronomers and some professional astronomers. So a very varied first year even. In 2023, we actually had our main programs finalized. So we actually decided on which ones we're going to run regularly. And of course, we had our first Killarney Starfest overlap. So once a year during the summer, we usually have at least one year where the Astronomer in Residence is happening, and we also have a Starfest out on site. 2024, which was last year, we were focusing on solar programming because, of course, that was when we had the solar eclipse in Ontario. Oh my gosh, so much things happening. It's been crazy but awesome. So the solar eclipse actually traveled through Ontario on April 8th, which, as you might notice, is very close to the summer. So there was a lot of solar interest, and of course, we had a lot of extra solar viewing. We had solar glasses, lots of talks about sunspots and that kind of thing. This year, of course, we have our astronomer in residence team. First team is on site now, finishing their first week, and we are looking forward to developing a solar system walk out in the parks. So it's not quite done yet, but that's the one coming soon. And there might even be a sundial in the location of the sun of the solar system walk. wonderful things. These telescopes are very, very different. So at the Elaina Carswell Observatory, we have a well-constructed dome from the 1960s, very solid on cement piers that have been there for a very long time. At Killarney Park, we have a much smaller setup with skypod domes or skyshed domes, I should say. Hoping we did that one right. And there we have two small telescopes, and each dome was set up over the course of several years. There's a board for programs at the Killarney Visitor Center, and so as you're coming into the park, you can find out what astronomy programs are running that week. The telescopes are much smaller, but they're in a far better location. And where is that location? Well, on the grand map of Canada, we're actually not that far from Toronto, although it will take you between 5 and 6 hours to get there, depending on the traffic and what part of Toronto you're trying to get out of. So Killarney Provincial Park is near Killarney, Ontario, which is a very small town with a very, very good fish and chips place. The Ellen Carswell Observatory is actually in Toronto at York University. So we have two very, very different locations, not terribly far apart, so they're drivable. Although if you are in, Edmonton, Calgary, or further further west, it gets to be quite a long drive. So the program summary of the Astronomer in Residence has a couple parts. We have the main programs I was telling you about and it's all trying to combine astronomy, nature, history, and education. The observatory program really is trying to find a good way to show people that not just what they're looking at, but the significance and the interest of what they're looking at. So not only are you looking at, the planet Mars, you're looking at this very, very interesting object that has special significance to different cultures, ways of tracking across the sky, and of course, all kinds of great tie-ins with local indigenous astronomy as well. We have solar viewing, which works wonderfully to connect the dark sky site with the sun because, especially this time of year, with an active solar cycle, we tend to get a lot of northern lights. And where better to view the northern lights than a dark sky site? So if you're out there doing solar viewing, one thing that you can see is if your sun has a lot of spots on it, you might well get some northern lights that night or soon after. So it's a great sort of crossover between daytime and nighttime viewing of very different phenomenons in astronomy. The amphitheater talk we've talked about before. This is really the goal to connect the park to the astronomy and what, of course, people might be able to experience for themselves, especially in the terms of star hopping or maybe even a little bit of celestial navigation with that North Star. The beach stargazing really, really looks at, sort of explaining the constellations, and it's the best place in the entire Killarney Park to enjoy meteor showers. So if you're there at a time that's particularly good for meteor showers, make sure to go out at the beach late at night and enjoy it. Um, the Meteorite Show and Tell is probably one of our less popular programs, but it is run once in a while, so check the schedule if you're really interested in it. But the Killarney Provincial Park actually has their own set of meteor and rock samples, including a sample from the moon, which I was very surprised about because those are pretty rare. So visitors actually can interact with them if you have an astronomer in residence who is running that program. There's also online streams and educational content, which is what we've talked about before in terms of things running across onto YouTube. So even if you can't make it out to the site and you just want to see what those telescopes are looking at, you can always follow along with any of the online content. And of course, we have the obligatory set of photos showing some really successful pictures from previous astronomer in residences. These photos in particular are from Bruce Waters, who's been up many, many times, both to work on the telescopes and as astronomer in residence, showing off some of the geology, which of course links us back to planetary sciences, and especially planets like Mars, which you can also see from the telescopes on site. And we have, of course, the ability to look very deep into nebula and fainter structures because of the wonderful dark skies. and then the aurora that I mentioned before show up wonderfully if they're active. So just a little bit more about the dark sky, because this is one of the things that I think with Killarney Provincial Park and especially with the Astronomer in Residence program, we really want to emphasize not just to other astronomers and scientists, but also to the general public is how much benefit we really get from these amazing dark skies. And we talk about dark skies being great for seeing things in astronomy, which is true, but they're really good for so much more. So let's go ahead and put it into a scale, because of course, if you're an astronomer, you have to be able to measure things. So we're going to use what's called the Bortle scale, and this scale was invented to take account of sky brightness. And it uses a couple factors that have a little bit of subjectivity. One of them is what's called naked eye limiting magnitude. This is the faintest star that you can see under the given conditions, but this depends on your eyeball's vision. And I don't think I've ever met two humans that have exactly the same vision. We're all a little bit different. So we need other factors as well. So sky glow is another factor, which is the diffuse illumination in the sky caused by artificial light that sort of makes it hard for us to see anything. And of course, the visibility of celestial objects. So is the Milky Way visible? Is the Andromeda Galaxy visible? Are these stars visible at all? And so if you have the conditions of Toronto, downtown Toronto, this is inner city or city sky, that you're at the 8 or 9 scale. So this is all the way on the left. Very, very bright. I think we've all seen this walking around any bright city. It's just a hazy blackness. There's not really much there. Maybe you can see the moon. And as you move out, you go to number 7, which is where York University is. We're around the areas of 7 and sometimes 6, which is city suburban sky or bright suburban skies, which is I can see a few stars, but it's not great. There's a lot of background noise. As you go further and further to the right, the sky gets darker and darker. There's less lights, less light pollution going up into the atmosphere. And Killarney Provincial Park is almost as good as it gets. So this is a category 2 dark sky site, so Bortle class 2 sky. You can see a lot. You can see the Milky Way, you can see the Andromeda Galaxy, you can see so many stars. It's going to be hard to find the constellations. And this is one of the fun things that a lot of city astronomers have to adapt to on their first night out, is how am I going to find the constellations when there's that many stars around? So it takes a little getting used to. The only thing that we could do better would be if we were able to go up onto a mountain or the big mountain of Hawaii, maybe. Then you get number 1, excellent dark sky site, as good as it gets, no light pollution at all. So we don't have that, but it's very, very close. So we're able to contrast the difference between York University over here at 6 and 7 and Killarney Provincial Park all the way over at 2. So these dark skies are one of the big motivations for astronomy at Killarney Park, but they're also a great tie-in between astronomy and the natural world. Because dark sky preserves are not only good for telescopes, they're actually amazing for the natural world as we know it and all of our human activity, as human operations systems, I suppose. So one of the things that they do help with that you might not have thought of before is they actually help limit disorientation in birds and bird migration. So something on the estimates of 500 million birds die every year in the US alone from colliding with buildings. And this is largely due to their disorientation from light pollution. That's hundreds of millions of birds dying every year from a very preventable cause. It's just we have too many lights going up and not enough going down. So anyways, the other thing that has been catching a lot of press for very good reason is, of course, the insect population collapse, which we have seen hit ecosystem after ecosystem here on Earth. And the insect population collapse is drastic. if you have dark skies and you have a dark sky preserve like Killarney Provincial Park, you actually create a refuge for insects, which might seem bad if it's mosquito season. However, it actually is a real blessing because it's propping up that whole area of the ecosystem. There have been a lot of studies about biological conservation and how artificial light at night, in combination with the other factors like habitat loss and chemical pollution and microplastics, is driving these insect population declines. So it helps the insects, it helps the birds that also want to eat the insects, and it helps lots of other creatures, amphibians, tadpoles, and humans. It turns out that actually, if you have proper dark skies, it really, really helps human health and well-being. And this is something that has actually been measured. So it's not a big surprise that if you go out to a beautiful dark sky preserve and go out to the observatories, you start to feel better. So I recommend it to everyone. I always feel amazing after I've been there for a couple days. It's a wonderful reset and it's a wonderful reminder of your connection to the universe, which who doesn't love that? Um, so the benefits to everything that we know of that lives is obviously a very big draw. However, we can also measure the direct benefits to astronomy. And this is something that you can also put out is if you want to argue with numbers, these numbers are very, very strong. So the benefits to astronomy is that, of course, you're able to see your stellar objects, your distant objects, your faint objects, much more clearly than you would otherwise. If you're a human being with your human optical system, your main quality for optics is the sky quality itself and your individual eyesight. For telescopes, we have to consider a lot of other factors as well. So you'll hear it get kind of complicated sometimes. We have the aperture of the telescope, how big is it, the mirror coatings, the transmissive optics, all the parts of the different telescope that make up the optical system. And generally, the noise in the system will have something like the square root of the background photon flux. So if you are trying to view an object that has a very faint magnitude, you don't get very many photons from it. And photons are those little tiny light packets that come in waves, and that's how we perceive light. So photons are light and they can be counted in individual packets if it gets to be a faint enough object. Not something you could do in your average house because if they're far too bright, or your average city, it'd be far too bright. But if you have, sort of a very faint, diffuse galaxy, maybe you're only getting, 100 photons from it, or maybe only 1,000 or 2,000 photons. And if your noise in your system is so high, it's above the level of your object, you're never going to see it. And so this is how we can measure it. And it's been measured actually extensively for many decades. In the early 1980s and 90s, there were a lot of researchers that put out models for giving telescope background noise models, which would include sky brightness. And so you could predict how good your telescope would be at imaging faint objects by using these models. And so one of the models that was used was called Schaefer curves, and it basically does what this graph does for the human eye. So the graph on here, this is actually the one that I put in because it's for humans. So this is would be for your own eyeballs if you had a what quote unquote average vision, which we won't define here for ease. If you had an object in the sky and you were trying to see it with your eye, would you be able to see something that was as faint as a magnitude 6 or a magnitude 8 object? And so this is where you're trying to see, could I see, for example, the Andromeda Galaxy with my naked eye in the Northern Hemisphere? So if it's daytime, we know we can't see anything other than the moon. So your limiting magnitude is -2, -4. So small numbers are for brighter objects, large numbers are for dimmer objects because astronomers are terrible at labeling things. And if you have a full moon out, obviously that full moon is going to be fairly bright and stop you from seeing the dimmest objects. If you have a 10-day moon or a moonless night, even better, then of course you can get down to a lower limiting magnitude with an average human vision. And so that moonless night at something like the Killarney Provincial Park is ideal for dim galaxies and faint objects. The fainter diffuse objects I mentioned a couple times, because they're so spread out, the diffuse part of them makes it really, really easy to wash out details. And this is something that is great for, pulling in extra details off of things like galaxies that are colliding together and structures where you really, really want to be able to see them. So, of course, popular dark sky targets for testing your quality include the Galaxy M33 in Triangulum. It's a key indicator. It's often used to tell how good your sky conditions are. If you have a class 4 sky or better, then you can see M33. If you have a class 1, then of course you're looking at the Milky Way itself casting enough light in comparison that you get shadows on the ground from the light of the Milky Way, especially the Scorpius and Sagittarius regions, which you pretty much have to be in the middle of Australia to get that one. So of course, benefits to astronomy, benefits to humans. Dark skies are wonderful, and of course, I wouldn't be doing my job here if I didn't show you some of the dark sky images that have come out of Killarney Provincial Park. And these telescopes, note, are much smaller than the telescopes at the York University campus. But because of the excellent sky conditions, they can occasionally outperform even the 1 meter telescope, which is quite impressive considering their size, which is what I'll tell you about next. So the telescopes on campus, as I mentioned before, the Elaina Carswell Observatory has a 1 meter telescope, which is the aperture of the primary mirror. It has a 60 centimeter telescope. Very, very large research grade telescopes. Out at Killarney Park, we have 2 domes. They're both fairly small in comparison. So first we have the Kachi Wasa Debabeng Dome, and this means seeing very far at a distance in Anishinaabe. This was established in 2018, and this telescope is a LX 600. Primary is 16-inch, and that's not very big compared to some of the other ones, but it's in this amazing location, and it is a fairly good telescope. So it has, of course, a nice apochromatic lens on its with its glass, and it has, of course, tracking, and it has a mounted sharp star 61 millimeter with a field flattener. And so this telescope is, is quite good, and has been there since 2018. Much smaller, but in excellent conditions. Now the other telescope we have is the, I think I've slightly mislabeled this one. Yes, Kachi Wasa Debabeng and Wasa Debabeng. Here we go. I just went the wrong way. So the Wasa Debabeng is seeing far at a distance, and this was established in 2010, so this is a little bit older, and it doesn't have as nice of features, but as a 10-inch, this is what's most commonly used for our solar viewing. It's a telescope Meade-Schmidt-Cassegrain, and it's very well suited for visual observations. It's used for lots of large family sign-outs. It's used for the Astronomer in Residence programs. We have occasional 300 plus person events out here, and it's been a wonderful wonderful backup to our Kachi Wasa Debabeng. And in case you didn't miss it, Wasa Debabeng was the seeing far at a distance, and Kachi Wasa Debabeng was seeing very far at a distance. So a little bit more about the Kachi Wasa Debabeng I'll probably leave for the notes afterwards. But this is also the telescope that we send live images from. So the Kachi Wasa Debabeng is not on here, but this is the one we actually have a cable run through to do live internet streaming directly from inside the dome. So if you are running a streaming night on this telescope, just bring your mosquito net with you, and the laptop can set up right there, and you'll be all set to do viewing all night. All right, so the Astronomer in Residence program has applications that open every year, and this year's applications have already closed for 2025 because the program's now running. So please do enjoy all of the blog entries this summer. If you're interested in applying next year, or you want to know a little bit more about the application process for Astronomer in Residence, I thought I would just go ahead and tell everyone roughly how it works. So generally, it runs from year open until about mid-April, late April at the last day, and that's for the current year. And that's sometimes starts in May. So generally, it's the roundabouts of end of January, beginning of February. The applications open online, and of course, the web forms can be filled out, and you send in your application and get evaluated. Candidates who don't qualify can, of course, elect to train up and increase their application support, because you do have to be able to run the programs on site. So the lead air or astronomer in residence is responsible completely for making sure all of the programs go through successfully. If you are accepted, you do get free lodging on site. And there is some asterisk, funding possible. There's a stipend of $400 Canadian per week, provided by the nonprofit Friends of Killarney through our program as Astronomer in Residence, and it has a limited availability. So if you are applying with that in mind, you definitely want to make sure to indicate it on the application form. The next batch will open in, of course, 2026 at the end of January or February. Usually you can pick whether you want 1 to 3 weeks, and we get 10 to 12. I think one year we might have had 14, and we decided that was too many accepted each summer. And people can pick. Actually, we did have a couple astronomers who went not for 1 week, but for 2 or 3 weeks. So there are options to extend for longer than 1 week as well. Even if you combine with other astronomers to make a group of 1, 2, or 3, like our current astronomers are a group of 3, one of you has to be the lead, and that's the one that has to pass the application. So a little bit of extra training is possible if you're in the Toronto area. If you would like extra training specifically for the Astronomer in Residence program, coming out to the Alan I. Carswell Observatory, we can actually pre-certify you. We can ask you to come and give guest talks, actually just like this one, but maybe a little bit more about what's up in the sky. And we have observations on campus using small telescopes, which are very, very similar, of course, to the Kichi Wasadababing and the Wasadababing. So if you're interested in training up on comparable small telescopes in Toronto, we can do that. We also have solar observing at the Alan I. Carswell Observatory. And of course, we have tours and outreach, so you can come by and practice your tour running skills if you want to. If you do have interest in collaborating on that, you basically just go to the Astronomer in Residence website and click on the contact area and send us an email. So we do have training options available as well. If you are successful, so what do you win? Of course, the Astronomer in Residence program is a wonderful resource. I especially recommend it to grad students or professors on sabbatical, which is why I'll be going this summer. And what do you get? You get the training and document support. We have complete manuals for all the telescopes, and of course, we have certified astronomers able to help you remotely. You get free lodging and parking, and of course, you get the permanent blog hosting, which is also a responsibility. But you do get that permanent blog note and portfolio, which will be available forever. So if you want to see the blogs from 2022, 2023, 2024, they're all still there. And so I thought I would show you one of our 2022 Astronomer in Residence, Aparisa Nozari, who hiked all the way up the hill when it was daytime. This is, I believe, one of the more challenging hikes, and took this picture of the general surrounds as an extra incentive for everyone to consider Astronomer in Residence. I suppose if you're not planning to visit, at least plan to apply. And Finally, as a little extra outro here, I thought I would just say if you're interested to support the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory for this program and all of our programs, I would consider everyone to please go ahead and join in and participate in the upcoming open air Astro Fair. Tickets are open now, so that's a little bit out of date slide. I should say open now. It's yorku.ca/science/observatory Astro Fair. And this Astro Fair, we're hoping to sell enough tickets to finance repairs and, of course, add to the Astronomer in Residence program, as well as everything else we're doing. If you don't want to join the fair, but you do want to actually just support us, there's a separate page for donations, also on that same web page. So you could just click on the donate area. And we love to collaborate on events. So we have, of course, current collaborators which are joining us out at the Astro Fair, Rask Toronto Centre, Space Place Canada, Astronomy in Action. The Killarney Provincial Park will actually be at the open air Astro Fair with a booth for the Astronomer in Residence. So there's a crossover. It's a giant crossover astronomy event. And if you'd like to join us for events or collaboration, you can email observe@yorku.ca, or you can email me directly at eahyde@yorku.ca. So thanks everyone for having me on tonight, and I think hopefully everyone understands a little bit more about this really interesting Astronomer in Residence program, how it runs, where they can find us, and we really look forward to seeing you all either in the blog space or out there in person.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that very insightful talk. I definitely learned a lot about the Astronomer in Residence program. If you don't mind, we have a few questions for you. Starting with, what was the inspiration for creating the Astronomer in Residence program?
So that's a great question. So the Astronomer in Residence program, I say, was in 2022, and I have trouble remembering back that far. But as I recall, it was really motivated by a couple different things, which was that I was looking for good partners for the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory to do outreach with. And so I started talking with some of the organizers who were setting up the observatory out at Killarney Provincial Park. And we decided that we would actually make a good team. And it turns out the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory could do a lot of things that the Killarney parks couldn't. And they obviously have the observatory out there. And together, we just actually signed what's called an MOU and made it an official partnership. So it was more of a, I suppose, great minds think alike sort of thing, where we were all looking for ways to do astronomy outreach and events together, and we decided that this program would be ideal. And as far as I know, there's no one else in Canada doing a program quite like it.
That's really cool. My next question is, are there any plans to expand the program to other parks?
Well, probably not officially, because the agreement we signed is specifically with Killarney Provincial Park. However, we have been reaching out at the Ellen I. Carswell Observatory to some other parks a little bit closer by to bring telescopes out to, for example, Downsview Park, which is also in Toronto, just a few stops down from the York University campus. And so we do have a outreach program with Downsview Park, and this summer we'll be out there with the Downsview Movie Astronomy Night, where they show a movie on this giant inflatable screen, and then we tell people what's up in the sky and turn the screen off, and we do observing. So we do actually have some fun expansion plans ish. It's going to be a little bit different, but keep an eye out for those Downsview events as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really fun. The next question is from Hector.
Thank you, Danielle. Hello, Professor. Personally, I am interested in the Astronomer in Residence program, so I have the next question for you. What kind of backgrounds have successful applicants had in the past?
That's a great question. So, to go as an astronomer in residence, you need to have quite a strong background in running astronomy tours and being able to operate small telescopes. And some key knowledge includes things like ability to lead star hopping and constellation tours, really good star lore knowledge, good navigation, so stellar navigation skills, and of course being able to run astronomy tours by yourself. Because if you are accepted as astronomer in residence, that means that you can run the same kinds of programs we do at the Elaina Carswell Observatory, but instead of having a group of 6 or 8 or 10 helpers, it's one of you. So it's a little bit more, I should say, a little bit more um, sort of like you have to be able to stand on your own to run it. So the backgrounds of successful applicants have been people who were very involved in things like the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada or RASC, who had run tours or sidewalk astronomy events by themselves, especially for very, very large groups. Obviously, people who are experienced in astronomy outreach and people who have trained up at the Elaina Carswell Observatory using our smaller telescopes and running tours by themselves, but through us, so they have a little bit of backup, shall I say, before they have to go out onto site and do it completely by themselves. A few people who have had successful applications were folks who had more technical background, who were very good in telescope operations and telescope controls. The telescopes on site are aligned, but the main thing is you have to know what not to do because if you unalign them, it's a big problem because we don't have dedicated staff on site. So someone will have to drive, 5 or 6 hours out there to fix it. So I would say that the backgrounds for successful applicants are varied, but the main thing that they have in common is that they are experienced astronomers who can run shows by themselves.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. And actually, thanks for mentioning that because that leads to my second question, that it's, what advice do you have for astronomers who may be new to public speaking or outdoor programs?
Yeah, so if you're new to this and you want to get more experience, I would always recommend to join a local group or a club so that you can learn from those people. So things like, of course, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a member for the RASC Toronto Center, but also other RASC groups or other astronomy clubs, and get that skill by doing. So start practicing your astronomy explanations, volunteer to give guest talks on channels like this, and get that experience that you need so that you're not doing it for the first time in front of a large audience.
Amazing, Professor. Thank you so much.
The next question's from Mary Helen.
So I mean, a big part of the experience, I guess, in doing this is working with the actual guests at the park. So seeing as you have been up there as an astronomer in residence, what was the best or the most interesting question you ever had from a park guest about astronomy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would maybe sidetrack it just a little bit and say, the most common question you're going to get is what is that and how far away is it? Um, so, I always recommend people to make sure that you have a good amount of star lore in your head. But when you print out your star sheet to hand out, or your planisphere, your star guide, whatever you're using to hand out to the public, maybe do one that has some of the numbers on the back, and then you can refer to it when they ask you detailed questions like, how far away is Polaris? And like, oh, I have to look that up. So you have to be a little bit prepared for those kinds of questions if you're out at the park. Um, I think, if I was to go with the best question, I love questions that really make me stop and think about things. And I did get one where we were viewing Mars one time, and everyone was coming through to look at Mars, the planet Mars, and we were telling every person as they come by, make sure to look at the polar caps. And do you see the polar cap? Do you see the little dark splotch? And yes, yes, yes. Okay, so keep going. And one person eventually asked me somewhere in the middle, and I was kind of had to really, really stop because I asked them if they saw the polar cap, and they said yes. And I said, "Do you see the splotch?" They said yes. And then they asked me, "But where's the planet?" And I realized at that point that you do have to sometimes take a step back because when you're explaining things, you do need to remember to put them into context, because of course, if you have a lot of people, they might not have heard the sort of the beginning of the story about that Mars is a planet like Earth but smaller and farther away, and the whole story. But it's a great question that really I had to really think before answering, so that was actually my favorite.
And of course, if you're up there as an observer, I mean, it depends what time of year and sort of what cycle the planets and everything are in. But what was your favorite observation while you were at the park?
Yeah, so actually my favorite thing to do is not even to use the telescopes. I know I shouldn't say that, but just to naked eye observing. So when you're out with the telescopes, you can use them to zoom in. And I actually had the screen set up. So we have a video projector on site where we can put a screen up and share the telescope image over the projector onto a large screen so that we had a crowd of about 250 people, so they could all see the screen even though they couldn't all go into the telescope. And while the screen was up, we were doing the star hopping, and the screen was showing the telescope's view of the Andromeda galaxy core. And I was showing people how to star hop over to Andromeda to see it as a naked eye object. And I just love it. I love being able to get to that spot where I've seen another galaxy in the northern hemisphere with my own eyeball.
And I'll pass it now on to Poria.
Thank you so much. So, thanks, Professor, again for tonight's talk. So, I had two questions. The first one is, why a place like Killarney Park is a great place for observing?
That's also a good question. So I think, it is a large part the sky quality. So not only is it very, very far away from any large cities and light pollution, but it's not terribly far away from the lake. So you have kind of a nice big empty space of darkness. So if you get the Google Maps night view of Canada and you go around the Killarney area of Ontario, it looks really, really black. And so that's why you get that nice Bortle 2 class skies. Now, the other thing that makes it a good place for observing is, of course, the fact that we have this nice big open field that the telescopes can sit in, and we get reasonably good views out, not to the horizon, but a wide swath of the sky, shall I say. So if the trees were very close by, it would actually block us to being able to point at lower down objects. So the fact that we have this large open field is actually due to the fact that they needed a helicopter landing zone for when hikers got lost. So every once in a while, you will actually see a helicopter land there, not at night, but during the day. So we've got a combination of a reasonably wide open space and very, very good sky quality.
Amazing. Thanks, Professor. And as for my final question, I was like, out of all parks, why was Killarney Park chosen for the Astronomy in Residence program?
Yeah, so again, this is probably back to like sort of the start of the program. It was really a case of a happy partnership, I suppose. They started the construction on the observatory before the Astronomer in Residence program actually took off. And the location being very good, which was your previous question, was why they wanted a telescope there on the site. Now, having a telescope already on the site makes it a really natural fit for an astronomer in residence program. The other thing that makes it really, really good is that the Killarney Provincial Park, they're willing to work with us to support an astronomer at that location. So you don't have to go with a tent and set yourself a little camping spot out in the middle of the woods. There's actually an astronomer's apartment that you can use. So you don't have to be camping out. You can have a safe place for your computer. You can actually set up for research if you want to. And so they have a really, really good set of facilities that works absolutely perfect with the Astronomer in Residence program. So I think it's a natural fit, even if it is a bit of a far drive.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here.
Right. Well, everyone, you have been listening to the Elaina Carswell Observatory's weekly TeleTube broadcast, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening were Mary Helen, Furia, Danielle, and myself, Hector. Make sure to leave any comments or questions in the comment section of the video and talk to us in the chat right now. We will be around for the next 20 minutes to answer your questions. All of our programs are free, but if you would like to make a donation, see our website at yorku.ca/science/observatory/. You can always connect with us on Twitter with the handle @observatory and check out our website for show notes, content, updates, and contact info at yorku.ca/science/observatory/. Thanks for tuning in. Clear skies and have an excellent night.